Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles Show. I'm Zach Berman here with Rich Hofmann, Bo Wolf, with his family this week. So we get to spend the next 3 days with Rich. Excited for that. Rich, thanks for joining us today and this week.
Zach, it's wonderful to be with you. And we were talking about how you were still in Florida, but you were in a different place in Orlando. How long was that drive over the past day here?
Yes, well, the drive down here, I came this morning. I'm in like South Florida at my in-laws' place. I'll be transparent. And it was about 3 hours this morning. I spent it listening to Jason Kelce and doing prep work for the show in my head. So, yeah, it went by pretty quickly.
Let me ask you too. So you are in kind of the southern Florida now at this point.
Like Boynton Beach, that area. Yep.
Okay. I had one of the worst drives of my life from Orlando, from Miami to Orlando, actually. And I decided instead of flying in between Sixers games, of course, instead of flying, I was like, I'll take a drive. I got the day off here, get a car rented or whatever. I drove up through the middle of the state. It was one of the scarier drives I've ever done in the middle of the night because it felt like every sign said alligator crossing. And I was like, man, I hope my car doesn't break down here. So if you went to Boynton Beach, I hope you kind of went not up through the middle of the state because that was a tough memory for me. When I got to Orlando, I was pretty pumped.
Yeah, no, I was straight through on the Florida Turnpike. Didn't see much except tractor trailers and the palm trees on the side. So went by quickly and was eagerly awaiting this show because we are talking rule changes, which might not be the sexiest topic, but I think it actually is going to have a material effect on games this year, as we'll get into, in particular, the kickoff rule change. Some leftover news and notes from the owners' meetings, very productive past few days in Orlando with Bo. We'll talk some Jason Kelce as well, some interesting information out there. But before that, I just wanted to get some news at the top. As I was driving down, Jeff McClain from the Inquirer reported that Jake Rosenberg, a high-ranking executive with the Eagles, vice president of football administration, he's going to leave when his contract expires after the draft. Now, I think the casual fan or even the devoted fan might not know the specifics of Jake Rosenberg. He's been with the organization since 2011. He's a key figure in their roster building strategy, their cap management, things of that nature. He was a bonds and commodities trader for a decade before coming to the Eagles, a Penn guy. Shout out to all our Penn viewers. And he's very well respected in the league, and he's leaving on his own volition. Because it's pretty clear Howie Roseman is the GM here in Philly, right? I mean, Howie Roseman's not going anywhere. He's kind of entrenched in that spot. And this is I'll give credit to Jeff McClain. Jake, went on record, kind of talked about it. Jake wants to continue kind of his growth toward becoming a general manager. So it's kind of about a trajectory in his career, kind of hit a cap, if you will, with the Eagles, one could say. But this is a major loss for the Eagles. And knowing the Eagles, you covered the Sixers, you saw kind of how important some of these, maybe not like the front line, your Daryl Morey or Sam Hinkie, but the guys kind of behind the scenes who really helped put that roster together. What was your reaction when you saw this news?
Well, yeah, I think especially the people who are on the front lines of salary cap negotiations, not the sexiest position in the world, but obviously super critical. Zach, I wonder, because there were a few years there where the Howie Roseman executive tree, it felt like other teams were just kind of rating the Eagles. They were like, we want somebody who's learned under Howie. And it felt like, you can correct me. I mean, you can add some more names. Andrew Berry is the one that I was thinking of where, highly respected guy, but he's here for 1 year. And then it's like, okay, I got the big job in Cleveland. And I wonder if, Jake Rosenberg, a lot of people think Howie Roseman is a salary cap guy. I think that's unfair. I think he does a lot more, and he's done a excellent job of team building at times during his tenure, that he doesn't need to be just the numbers guy anymore. I wonder if getting out from his shadow though is playing into Rosenberg's decision here. I don't know.
Yeah, interesting perspective there, and I would say like following up on kind of what you said, that Howie is an all around GM in the sense that he did not play football at Florida, but he's been in the NFL now for over 2 decades. He's worked with Andy Reid. He's worked around a lot of like really good, smart, quote unquote football guys. I think Howie's a football guy now with the background too of someone who has a law degree and came up on the cap side of the operation. And the reality is, being a GM is much more than sitting there and evaluating the right guard from Boise State, right? I mean, it's really about how do you take the resources that you have. Howie will tell you this. Everyone in the league essentially has the same resources. You have the same allotment of draft picks each year. You have the same cap space each year. How do you maximize that cap space? How do you maximize the draft picks? And Jake has been party to seeing different stages of this. The team building from a rebuilding perspective, trying to keep a championship team together, different head coaches coming in, like regime changes, and so. When you're in Philly for, he came in a year before me, so 14 years or thereabouts, going into year 14, so 13 years, you see quite a bit, and Jake Rosenberg's seen quite a bit, and he's the man kind of on the front line often with contract negotiations. And I will also add to your point, like Andrew Berry. He was barely here for a cup of coffee almost, right? I mean, he was here in between Cleveland stops. But to your point, especially, Joe Douglas was here, goes on, becomes a GM. Andy Weidel was here, goes on, becomes he's kind of the head of the football side of the building for the Steelers. They have guys who've gone on, become assistant, or people who've been assistant GMs, like Ian Cunningham in Chicago, Kate Raich in Cleveland, Brandon Brown with the Giants. And what's interesting though is you see, I hate splitting it up as football guy and like non-football guy, or football person, non-football person. But for someone like Jake, who doesn't have the traditional football background, right? There's I don't think that stigma's there, but kind of like when people say someone like Joe Douglas comes in and works with Howie, and you kind of see one way of doing it, and you take the
Joe Douglas looks like a football guy,
yeah,
compared to Howie.
Yeah, and so I think a team would benefit greatly by hiring Jake and by kind of putting him on that type of track, because, and I'm not just telling you like from my exposure to him, from talking to people in the league, he's extraordinarily respected. And as I said, Jeff conveyed that well, and good job in Jeff's piece there.
I think Howie is trying to convey that he's a football guy, Zach. I remember when I worked for Philly Voice, Jimmy Kempsky and I guess I don't think Jimmy would mind me sharing this. Howie has a lot of pictures in the AP database, all of these pictures that we use for our digital stories. He loves throwing the pigskin around before games and at Eagles charity events. There are a remarkable amount of pictures of Howie in a suit or, at training camp, whatever, throwing a football. So, maybe he is a football guy.
Yeah. I like it. Like anyone who's ever had that conversation with me, I would always say like, what does it take to become a quote unquote football guy? I like Howie's been a general manager since 2010. He's watched more tape than like every guy who said, well, they played backup linebacker in high school, right? I mean, what does it take to become that? I think the Eagles. I think that argument was it was popular during the Chip Kelly years, right? Totally. I mean, Chip once called like Tom Gamble the football guy.
But Gamble,
yeah. But I think we're like long past that assessment of Howie at this point, and it's really how well he can build a team and certainly maintain a team.
Look, He's not perfect, but
Yeah.
I'm not gonna get caught up in football guy number cruncher when you lead the team to 2 Super Bowls in like 7 years. So it's yeah.
So one thing actually Howie's going to be tasked with during these next few weeks and these next few months is figuring out if the Eagles are well equipped to return kickoffs. And I say that because returning kickoffs is going to look considerably different. And I could kind of outline it, but I'll give a quick shout out. Rich had a good, I say Rich, you know, I'm talking to you here, had a good thing in your newsletter today, which I hope everyone subscribes to. And you know, talking about kickoffs, this is big news for the NFL. This is a radical change, like you can see in the headline here. And basically, so the ball was kicked from the 35-yard line, and it's instituted for 1 year, which is the same. All kicking team players, other than the kicker, though, will line up with 1 foot on the receiving team's 40-yard line. The kicker cannot cross the 50-yard line until the ball touches the ground or a player in the landing zone or end zone. Then the 10 kicking team players cannot move until the ball hits the ground or a player in the landing zone or the end zone catches it. And I can kind of get into all the alignments. The thing with the landing zone is it's an area between the receiving team's goal line and its 20-yard line. You can go online to kind of see visual demonstrations of this, which was done in what, the XFL, But the bottom line here is they're bringing kickoffs back. It's going to look far more like a football play, almost like a running play, if you will, than, you know, where you have blockers in front of you, and then a traditional kickoff. So as you've looked into this, what type of effect do you think it's going to have?
So I like it. It took me a minute to digest everything, because when you talk about things like landing zone and players have to stay stationary until, you know, the ball gets touched or it hits the ground, I thought maybe this is a little hokey. But just watching it and thinking about where we have come over the years in kickoffs and where we are right now, I think I like it. And I think it's the rare rule change where it's going to accomplish the 2 goals that the NFL set out, right? They want to make the game safer, less concussions. And that's obvious, right? If players are starting at a stationary position closer to the goal line, less high-speed collisions. Get that completely. But they also want to make the game more fun, right? They want more football plays. They don't want to see the ball go into the end zone, because touchbacks have skyrocketed over the past few years. Real quick, ZB, because it's not Trivia Thursday in my newsletter, but I looked this up on Stat News, so do not hold it against me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is right. And I was going to do it for tomorrow's newsletter, but it's opening day. I figured we might as well go Philly stuff for that. So since you have been on the beat, I don't know the exact date of that, but I think that'll give you. I think that'll give you a hint. Yeah, that it's not. There was nothing around that time. There have been 4 Eagles kickoff return touchdowns in regular season games. I don't know if it includes the postseason. Can you name the players who have delivered those kickoff return touchdowns?
4 Eagles kickoff return touchdowns. Okay, so I can tell you, Damaris Johnson's one of them, right? Or is no? Well, okay. Josh Huff is definitely one of them.
He is one.
Josh Huff's one of them.
And I'm gonna give you a hint. He did it twice, actually.
Josh Huff did it, or someone else did it twice.
Josh Huff did it twice. So you're looking for 2 more names after that.
Okay, 2 more names. Okay. So yeah, because Damaris Johnson was a punt return. That was in Dallas. So Josh Huff,
dangerous weapon.
Yeah, I don't think Sproles would fit that. Sproles was returning punts. He wasn't returning kickoffs. Chris Polk, was he one?
Very good.
Okay, Chris Polk's one.
What a name, Chris Polk. That first chip here, that was something. They would put him in as the victory cigar, and he had a little juice.
Yep, number 32 from Washington. And then so let me think from it's probably the Doug era, and I should know this then. If it's the Doug area, Wendell Smallwood.
Very good, ZB.
Okay, all right, good. I nailed it. All right, Damaris Johnson was a punt return. I made that error.
So I think the fact that we are talking about Wendell Smallwood, Chris Polk, and the fact that even with your recall and you did get it, like pretty forgettable play over the past, even 10 years, right? Like just not a lot of excitement. I mean, I remember when I think Josh Huff did it. One of those I think was against the Titans it was like the opening kickoff of the game. It was like such a jolt because you weren't even paying attention to kickoffs. It was like, whoa, holy crap.
Exactly.
Like they actually were able to get that blocked up and run it back. And I think it's kind of the same thing. It's what extra points used to be too, right? That's like if you're in the stadium, maybe you go to the bathroom. If you're at home, maybe you go to the kitchen, make some food, something like that. It just was not exciting. So the more I think about this, like the kickoff rule, it's changed quite a bit over our lifetimes. I mentioned this in the newsletter today. Do you remember the wedge buster? Like the wedge and the
yes.
That guy was your concussion uncle's favorite football player. I mean, it almost seems kind of ridiculous now that they had one player who would run on basically like a kamikaze mission, like just kind of like to break up these offensive linemen who were locking arms and just kind of run into them and allow everybody else to make the tackle. Jason Short is the old Eagle that I always think of with that rule. But anyway, my point is it's changed a lot over the years already. So when you think about that, I kind of like it. Like it's like you said, it's more of a running play. And look, the strategy is going to change a lot here from both the players you put kind of in front of and kind of blocking it and how you coach it. So like, who are you putting here's a question when we get to the strategy, I would say.
Yep.
Are you putting Saquon Barkley back there to
well, that's interesting. I had that conversation with someone yesterday. We'll get to that. My quick answer is no, but someone similar to Saquon would be interesting. I do want to correct myself real quick, by the way. I said XFL is actually the UFL where I think this came from.
I thought it was XFL.
Oh, was I correct? Okay. All right.
I'll correct the correction, I think. Wait, let me
either way, it's from one of the secondary leagues. And if I didn't, I also want to clarify too that the ball has to be returned if it's kicked into the landing zone. One thing that I was talking to Andy Reid, Flex, about this. Okay, someone says it was XFL. I was talking to Andy Reid about this, and Andy Reid says that basically there's like 2,000 plays a game that aren't entertaining the fans. It doesn't matter to the players. It doesn't matter to the coaches, right? Like it's a touchback and it's kind of like a wasted play. So now you're adding excitement back into this. Like you mentioned, it's supposed to kind of be a football play while not presenting the injury rate of traditional kickoff returns, which is why they kind of scaled back from kickoff returns. Those were plays with high injury rates. This should be more comparable to a regular running play. The ball can be returned if it rolls to the end zone or kicked to the end zone through the air. But basically what you're getting is more returns, and you're not getting the same running start from a long distance, right? So that, like you said, that brings down some of the collisions there. I know special teams coaches have already kind of looked at the strategy. I'm certain this is going to bring more excitement to the game. Like you have to watch kickoffs. There's going to be more kickoff return scores. I don't think it's coincidence that when this was announced shortly thereafter, Cordero Patterson signs a deal with the Steelers, right? Cordero Patterson is really valuable with this type of thing. And so that kind of gets into the strategy, which is, I think you'll see more of the running back type returner who has field vision. That's going to be really important. Field vision, as opposed to kind of just like the straight line speed running through the return, because there's less space to navigate. Think of it more like a running play than a punt return.
It's like an outside zone,
said.
Where you have the whole field available and you're going to have blocking schemes. I mean, think of those four names, man. Josh Huff, Wendell Smallwood, Chris Polk. not exactly who you would think of as like, incredible field vision. Like their job was to just get north-south and, get 20, 25 yards, whatever it was. And now there's like some legit strategy here where, it seems like you can do some trick plays out of this. It seems like there are a lot of things you can do. I think though, when you and the rest of the beats are doing your 52-man roster contest, I don't know if anybody who's listened to this podcast has heard about that before, but I think it's been mentioned a few times. I think this changes some things.
I don't think
right?
Bo's heard of it before, right?
But no, it was more directed at you. The Gunners Union cannot be happy about this, right? The guy on the outside who
that'd be a great union. Yeah,
just Matthew Slater just by himself.
Yeah, seriously.
He got out at the right time, but it feels like, I don't know, you would go maybe a little bit heavier with your special teams guys who can block and move at the same time. Maybe tight ends and linebackers matter a little bit more now. I guess starting with that, also too, like the way you block it, I know some people have mentioned there's going to be like legit run blocking schemes out of this formation, right? Like does Jeff Stoutland get involved even here a little bit? I don't know.
Yeah. I do want to get into the schemes here and kind of the personnel that I think matches what the Eagles have and perhaps they could add. Before we do that, though, I don't want too far to go along here without telling everyone about Olipop, okay? Because Olipop, we're real excited about Olipop partnering with us. They are the world's first functional soda with a classic soda taste and the benefits of plant-based fiber. They prebiotics and other botanical ingredients that support gut health. It's the new kind of soda with only 2 grams of sugar and 9 grams of fiber per can. It's important for me to convey this here because there's a recent launch in all Wawa stores. It's available online and in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide. So you go into your Wawa, you want a soda, but you kind of don't want the health that you're a little concerned that traditional soda is unhealthy. Well, this is where Olipop comes in. It's a new kind of soda. 2 out of 3 Americans say they suffer from digestive issues, and 95% of Americans don't get the daily recommended amount of fiber. Olipop is tackling both of these issues with a drink that tastes just like soda. Research has linked some of those issues to poor gut health. So taking care of your microbiome may be one solution to your digestion problems. And Olipop has 9 grams of prebiotic fiber in every can that can help support your digestive health. Olipop conducted a study that showed the Oli Smart formulation boosts it has beneficial gut bacteria and it generates digestive, or it helps your digestive and overall health. Olipop also has delicious nostalgic flavors like vintage cola, classic root beer, orange squeeze, classic grape, strawberry vanilla, cream soda, and cherry cola. They also have a Dr. Pepper type that is called Dr. Goodwin, and a brand new Sprite type that is called lemon, that is a lemon lime flavor. Use the code PHLY20 for 20% off your next order from Olipop. The discount only applies to one-time orders, not to subscription orders. Olipop is sold online, drinkolipop.com or Amazon, and it's available in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide, including Wawa, Target, Sprouts, Wegmans, ShopRite, and GoPuff. And while I'm at this, let me also tell you about Mortgage CS. And you've heard me talk about Mortgage CS. I've heard a lot about real estate in recent weeks, and because this is kind of the spring buying season, if you will. And Mortgage CS offers refinancing options, including rate and term refinances for a rate payment reduction or cash out refinances that tap into home equity, making a smart choice for those with high interest debt or those who are funding home projects or education. The spring purchase market is heating up quickly, and many clients, especially first-time home buyers, are reaching out as they want to be ready when rates drop. But that's what everyone's doing. Given the limited inventory and the strong demand, competition is going to be fierce throughout the year. Get in touch with Mortgage CS to prepare and ensure you will be able to stand out and make the strongest offer possible. Mortgage CS stands for Mortgage Concierge Service. It's white glove service. It's an independent mortgage broker based right in Philadelphia, and they're available 24/7, but they're licensed coast to coast. California, Colorado, DC, Delaware, Florida, Massachusetts, Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Virginia, and Washington. So don't forget to spread the words to family and friends in those areas. I'm in Florida right now. I'm going to tell everyone at dinner tonight about Mortgage CS. So they're here to educate and empower the clients, and they have exceptional customer service with 24/7 availability from Alec and Ben. When you hear the word mortgage, think of Mortgage CS. Think of Ben and Alec. Save Ben's telephone number, 267-391-7425 to your phone. Email Ben at ben@mortgagecs.com. Call, text. You can call or text Ben at any time, day or night. You can even talk Philly sports. You can talk the new kickoff rule. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to get started. This advertisement is not a commitment to lend or extend credit. Mortgage CS is an equal housing opportunity mortgage broker. All loans are subject to credit approval. Certain restrictions may apply. Company NMLS ID number 1464766. Visit mortgagecs.com for more information. So while I take a drink of water here, let me ask you, you're Michael Clay. I'm Nick Sirianni. I just got about a foot shorter. And I'm coming to you and I'm saying, Clay, draw me up something. What is like how am I going to do this? What would you recommend to him?
Well, I think it would be a couple things, Zach. I think the first thing would be we probably need to get a little bit heavier at the back end of the roster. Now, maybe that's just one or two guys. I don't know exactly how that shakes out. I think you probably have a better feel for, okay, these players were on for just special teams and just as gunners and just for their speed, those type of things. That would be the first thing. But I want you to talk this through with me. So if it's not Saquon Barkley, who on the Eagles roster right now is kind of the vision, like the running back, right? Is it? I don't think it's kind of Gainwell.
Yeah. So it's interesting you say this because I was obviously thinking about this, and yeah, Gainwell has kickoff return experience, but he's not necessarily who I would kind of point to here. Now Saquon's the ideal.
No way.
Yeah, Saquon's the ideal candidate, but I'm not throwing Saquon out there for additional. I know that obviously that there's the injury, it's the reduced rate for injury here, but nonetheless, you're getting the ball 25 times a game on offense, right? That might certainly be sufficient. I think Paris Campbell, who the Eagles just signed, who has experience returning punts and kickoffs, would be interesting in this type of role. And I know I said earlier that you're not just kind of looking at that straight line speed. If you look at Paris Campbell's history, even going back to Ohio State, when Urban Meyer was there, he was kind of used in that Percy Harvin type role, that Curtis Samuel type role. I don't want to call him a wide receiver running back hybrid. He had 90 catches at Ohio State. He had 60 catches with the Colts a few years ago. Shout out to the 60 catch receivers, as Bo would say. But he hasn't really been he has a running back type skill set. Like he's almost been a gadget player out of the backfield. And I think his speed, his ability to have kind of the yards after the catch, that's one thing that jumps out. Covey's not a traditional returner. I think Covey could actually be interesting in this role. I've always found his vision and his decision making to be an asset on punt returns. And he would tell you that he's a different type of punt return. I see in the chat Boston Scott. Boston Scott would be interesting, although Boston Scott's not under contract. I don't know if they would bring Boston Scott back. I think come draft time, this is something that you look for. But you know what? If you think kind of like the perfect guy for this is Cordell Patterson, then I'm thinking, all right, that wide receiver running back hybrid type player. And that's what Paris Campbell strikes me as. So I was actually going to put Paris Campbell as the thumbnail for this photo or for the show today. I just didn't know if we're trying to draw in an audience. We don't have Bo's yellow shirt today to help draw it in. If number 0 on the Giants was going to be the way to go. So I went Covey, but those are two that jumped to mind.
Yeah, I think that good decision by you with the thumbnail. I think you would generally default to punt returner, right? This is not as fast developing of a play as a kick return is. It's like, it's not just get downhill, right? And I think punt returners, when they do get that chance, right, they're looking for, they have more freedom to kind of experiment, right? That's traditionally how it's been. They can take different angles. They don't necessarily have to run straight forward right away. Although Covey generally does do that for the most part. He's pretty decisive in looking for the holes. Like, he's pretty decisive in getting, his 9-10 yards, whatever it may be. And he did a great job this year. And I think, Zach, you mentioned a name, Michael Clay. Like, he really matters here. You said this on yesterday's pod. Like, I think this play obviously is going to matter more in general, right? We talked about that's what the NFL's aim is for this, right? They want the ball in play. They want it to seem more like a regular football play. But I think it's really going to matter the first few months of this season. Like, when the whole league is trying to get a handle on this, if you have an understanding, and if you are ahead of the curve, like, I think at some point everybody is going to generally catch up, right? I don't think it's going to be a massive advantage, but who knows, man? Like, in September, when this is a whole new thing, it could be like a real asset if you have everything together for this. And like, look, it's funny with Michael Clay, right? He had the ire of the team in 20, or the fan base in 2022. I actually, it's funny. I remember a game against the Titans, I think it was in 2022. It was the AJ Brown, why did you trade me game? Just dominant performance on both sides of the ball, Zach. And I thought it was funny because in Nick Sirianni's post-game speech, which of course the Eagles disseminated on all their social channels, the special teams had its like first good performance of the season. And Nick Sirianni, all he talked about after the game, despite the fact that AJ Brown went crazy and the defense was really good, was special teams, way to go. I got a lot of confidence in you. And it paid off, right? Like in 2023, I mean, didn't pay off in 2022, but in 2023, it kind of went under the radar because the other two sides of the ball were much more dysfunctional than they were the season before. But Michael Clay had a great season, so he's going to be an important guy here.
Yeah, that's a good point. And like, the personnel that he uses is going to be different. I imagine you said it earlier. You're going to want Clay get together with Stoutland, and I think that the backup tight ends are especially important because you mentioned it. This is almost like offensive line blocking schemes, right? So you think about who's your pass blocking or your run blocking tight end. That would be the type of personnel that you certainly want out there on the field in these situations. And I also want to give a shout out to you because, as you said it, and as I'm thinking about it, especially early in the year, I would consider putting Saquon back there. And the reason I was hesitant is because, look, when you're Saquon Barkley, you want your numbers, right? I mean, you just signed this contract. You want your offensive touches to go to your total yards. You want to beat Christian McCaffrey for the total yard. You want to be that type of player. And if you're picking up, 30 yards on a kickoff return, that's not showing up in kind of the Pro Bowl voting, if you will, right? But early in the season, if you have this dynamic player like Saquon Barkley, and teams are still figuring out how to defend this, how to block this, if you have an exceptional player, special player, as the Eagles labeled him, that could be a significant advantage. And maybe it doesn't have to be every time, but you have a high leverage kickoff return in that spot. It's the fourth quarter and you're in Brazil, you're playing the Browns, and Deshaun Watson just threw a pass to Jerry Jeudy in the end zone, ties the score up at 20. Yeah. Okay. So here you go. They have this long field goal with Michael Dunn blocking, and they tie the score at 27. Okay. And the Eagles need to get in the field goal range. There's a minute left on the clock. The Eagles need to get in the field goal range. I want Saquon Barkley returning it in the same way that the Eagles used to put Deshaun Jackson back there as well. And maybe this is such a thing that they say, you know what, this is 4 touches a game for you, 5 touches a game for you. So we're going to have you do it every time. But certainly in those situations, in those high leverage situations, I want a guy like Saquon who has the vision, who can break tackles, who knows kind of how to navigate in these situations, who can read blocks. That's what I'd be interested in.
Yeah, and look, he's done it before. I don't know if he's done it in the pros. Something sticks out to me. I remember, I think they played Ohio State in 2018. He ran the opening kickoff back. So James Franklin was doing it a little bit in college. And obviously, like, Saquon is just such an electric player that I think it's worth, at least, like you said, not an every down type of thing, because it's like you said, like, if you're a 3-down player and you're supposed to get, 20, 25 touches a game, whatever it is, like, I think it's probably smart to do those on the normal plays. But on the other hand, like, if you need it in a big spot, like, this guy, I think, might be better at this than a lot of guys in the league. Like, you might have a Deshaun level weapon for this specific play with Saquon, just because it's like you said, if it's actually going to be like a running play, it would probably help to have a running back there, somebody who's used to reading blocks and seeing how those things work out. So yeah, I wouldn't do it every play. And I also think the Eagles, it'll be interesting to see, because I don't see an obvious option outside of him on the roster to do this and, excel in it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is a Paris Campbell. Maybe Covey is really good at it, but it is a nice option to have for sure.
Yeah, for the record, you hit it on the head. Saquon Barkley hasn't done it with the Giants, but had 2 touchdown returns on kickoffs at Penn State on 18 total returns. So think about that rate. 1 in 9 returns he was taking to the house. So yeah, Saquon would definitely be a candidate there. We're going to get into some of the rule changes, but before we do that, we'll talk about a rule that wasn't put in place, and that is the Eagles' proposal so I should say there's not going to be surprise onside kicks anymore, right? Because, that'll be kind of obvious with this kickoff change. But with the Eagles, instead of an onside kick, were proposing a 4th and 20. So in that scenario, I'm talking about, you're playing the Browns. Let's say that the Eagles score a touchdown late in the game. They have no timeouts. They're down 3. Instead of going for an onside kick, what they would do is they go for a 4th and 20 from their 20-yard line, right? Not a high percentage play, but if you convert it, you stay on the field. This was not put in place, but my understanding is that this could have some momentum if the kickoff return rule, because the kickoff returns, the changes are on a 1-year trial. If that goes well, I can see this going into place next year. I know the Eagles, it's the second year in a row they tried proposing this, hasn't been accepted, but it's getting closer. What were your thoughts on that one?
Well, they keep moving it back too to try and get it accepted too. It was 4th and 15 last year, and then they said, "All right, well, let's try 4th and 20." They should 4th and 26 should be their next way they go about it. But
yeah, that'd be a good one.
I don't think that's going to happen unless the 2004 Packers or 2003 Packers are playing defense. But I do think that's the one weakness for this rule, right? The fact that you have to declare an onside kick and you have to tell the onside kick is terrible right now, Zach.
Yeah.
And I understand why they changed it for player safety and, the old rule where you could motion a guy across and, have a big running start, the 2 bouncing up, like that was a pretty heavy collision. And obviously it resulted in more recoveries, but I understand why they changed it. They need to figure out something with this, because I think it's heavily advantageous right now to the team that's ahead, right? And I think the NFL, they want goofy comebacks at the end of games. They want close games. So I do think the fact that you not only have the onside kick, which has been neutered in past years, like, you don't even have the element of surprise anymore. You can't even do the pooch kick. You don't even have that option. So they do need to figure something else out. I don't know. Do you think that what do you think of, regardless of whether it passes or not, the 4th and 20 idea of making that, a chance for a team to come back in the game?
I like it because it's a football play, number one. When you look at the percentage of conversion on that play, it's a fairly low rate. If you don't convert that 4th and 20, it's similar to recovering the onside kick. The game's effectively over, right? It's far enough back that unless you're getting, even if you do convert it, unless you're getting like a 60-yard gain or something, right? You still need to kind of put a sustained offensive drive together. I like the idea of having a football play in that situation. And if it comes down to making it we joke 4th and 26, but something a little longer, I like the idea of a football play to use there.
Yeah. So it seems like the NFL, it didn't pass this year, but it seems like the NFL is going to tell teams like, see, you don't actually have a chance to come back this year. Like, you voted against this. It's going to be really hard for you to make a comeback with this new kickoff rule, which I think is probably going to go well, and then keeping the onside kick rule the same way. So I imagine the competition committee and whoever votes on this is going to say, see, do you want to change this or not?
Yeah. Now, before we get into some of the rules that were put in place and some Jason Kelce talk and some leftover news from the combine, I want to tell you that if you're thinking about these rule changes and you forget to cancel a subscription, or you have subscriptions you don't know about, the place to turn is Rocket Money. Do you find that there's subscriptions that you forget about or you paid twice for and you didn't realize it? I certainly do. Rocket Money cancels a subscription for you that's otherwise time-consuming. Rocket Money will alert you to an increase in subscription price, or it will negotiate it for you. Did you know that nearly 75% of people that have subscriptions have forgotten about it? And you can look at all your subscriptions, whether it's streaming services, fitness apps, delivery services. It's never ending. For me, it's a lot of websites, right? That I'm reading. Thanks to Rocket Money, I'm no longer wasting money on the ones that I forget about. I'm always trying to save money, and when you turn to Rocket Money, it helps with that specifically. Rocket Money's helped me cancel some of these subscriptions, and now I'm finally starting to see that account balance working the way I want it to be. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions. With Rocket Money, you have full control over your subscriptions and a clear view of your expenses. You see it all in one place. If there's something you don't want, Rocket Money helps you cancel it with just a few taps. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's features. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/PHLY. That's rocketmoney.com/PHLY. And once you have those extra dollars saved and you want to go celebrate, there's one thing to do. Bo would tell you it's to suck it back with the boys. Have some Miller Lite. A lot's changed over the years, but one thing that hasn't is the great taste of Miller Lite. It was the original light beer, and to this day, it's still the best one. Miller Lite has more of the taste you want and less of the stuff you don't. It's that great taste. That's the best light beer. It's a great tasting beer that's less filling. It has the clean finish, and it's always fresh and delivered for you with simple ingredients. Miller Lite keeps it simple, undebatable quality, great taste, only 96 calories. It's the beer that strips away everything you don't need and holds on to what matters most. A light beer that tastes like beer, less filling, and only 96 calories. The original light beer since 1975. Times change, but you can always enjoy the great taste of Miller Lite. Tastes like Miller time. To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/PHLY Birds, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories per 12 ounces. So, as is often the case, when I'm in the Bo seat, is I'm mapping out the show. I'm thinking how it's going to go, and then time comes up on me. I'm like the person who, John Mulaney has the joke. You write "Happy Birthday," you do the big H, the big A, the big P on a sign, and all of a sudden you're trying to fit all the other letters in. So we don't have to go through all the other rules, some of which are kind of like small potatoes, procedural type stuff. Some things I did want to point out is that now you can put 2 guys on IR designated to return in the preseason. This was a good one because in the past, guy gets hurt in training camp, they go on IR, they're on IR, they can't come back that year. I did want to ask you, as someone who follows the NFL closely and has covered a lot of NBA trading deadlines, your thoughts specifically on pushing the trade deadline back a week. And in theory, now having more teams that are kind of in contention or kind of like making that decision. What did you think of the decision to make it the trade deadline after the Week 9 game?
Well, I think it's good, Zach. Just in general, you want teams to have more clarity. You want teams to be, you basically want more sellers, is what you want. You want more
Yep.
teams that say, all right, we're out of it this year. We are willing to, sell some of our, sell high on some of our better players or maybe expiring contracts or whatever, go to a contender, those type of things. So I'm for it. I still think the NFL, I don't know. I don't know exactly how they do it. Maybe the amount of wheeling and dealing in the NBA is too much, but I would like to see more high profile NFL trades, especially because like in the NFL, in the NBA, you're not really seeing this as much anymore. These first round picks that are just, like the Panthers gave to the Bears last year. Hey, you have our first round pick next year.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in the NBA, like an unprotected top pick. I would like to see more of that. That's fun, right? And I think especially with the fact that you can build your team through the draft, through the middle rounds of the draft, even. There are more ways to go about this, but I am for that. I think, was that a Howie proposal as well?
That one was actually, that was the Steelers. I think the Eagles were interested in pushing it back to Week 10. So 1 week later, the Eagles were with a few other teams pushing it back to Week 10. So they kind of compromised and went with the Week 9 trade deadline. I think for the reasons you mentioned, it's good to push it back. I want to see more trades in the NFL. One thing, it's a sentiment that Bo and I talked about last week. And when we kind of talked about some of these trades, trading at the deadline compared to trading during the offseason. And I heard this at the owners' meetings talking to people, is sometimes you can get more value when you make those trade deadline deals for 2 reasons. Like GMs aren't attached to the draft picks as much, right? You haven't gone to the combine. You haven't really started scouting these guys. If you're doing your mock draft now, and you and I are going to talk draft later this week, but all the prospects now much better than you did back in October or November. And then also teams are going for it. It's the reason why you see some of these NBA trades that and you mentioned obviously like the deal there was a Bradley Chubb trade in the NFL. Teams have aspirations that one guy can kind of put you over the edge, and that's when draft picks get moved. So I'm definitely in favor of that. I did want to ask you too. We don't have to go through all the rules, but one thing that I like, I'm curious if you agree, is the third replay challenge is now available following one successful challenge. So it used to be such that you had to nail both those challenges to get the third. Now you only have to nail one. What do you think of that?
I'm not sure if I'm for that. I don't know. Replay slows the game down. I get it. You want to get all the calls right, but there is an element of like, are you taking away from the entertainment here and in replays? I do think the NFL generally does a better job with replays than the other sport. And obviously because there are fewer plays and possession of the ball matters so much, I would argue that challenges in the NFL matter more than in other sports. But yeah, I could take or leave this one, I would say.
I do have some leftover thoughts from the owners' meetings, but before we get into that, you wanted to ask some Jason Kelce questions, and I think every day is kind of a good day to talk Jason Kelce on this show. So let's hear.
Yeah. So there was a piece this morning by Andrew Marchand, and he was talking about Kelce's media free agency, and it was like the gist of it is that ESPN is looking really hard at him, but he has a bunch of other suitors. Like he might replace Robert Griffin on Monday Night Countdown or something, whatever that is now. But CBS wants him. Amazon Prime wants him. It's the only place that he did not list that I guess seemingly does not want him is Fox, and maybe they do, but they're also paying Tom Brady $1 billion this year, so maybe that takes him out of it. So we know Jason, he has the podcast, and he has Saquon Barkley on today. What do you think, though, as somebody who's been around him and as somebody who shadowed him last year as he was kind of thinking about life after football, once he joins the quote unquote mainstream football media, like where do you think he's destined? Do you think it's a studio show? Do you think it's actually calling games? Like what type of situation do you think he's going to go for?
Yeah, this is a great question. And obviously, to kind of, not to inject myself in this, but this time last year, like the spring break for the kids, we were visiting my in-laws down in Florida. And I didn't fly back with my family. I flew back. I was down here in the same condo, and I flew back, or I flew out to LA to spend 3 days with Jason as he went through the broadcast boot camp, as he was trying to figure that out, right? And so the Fox thing, if you're talking about a studio spot, that's in LA, and I don't think that would be as kind of conducive for him from a family. I think when you talk about the studio show, if it's ESPN and you're in Bristol, or you're traveling to a game once a week, right? Or if it's CBS and you're in New York, or NBC, I think they're either in Stamford, Connecticut, or in New York. That's obviously more conducive from his suburban Philadelphia home. But I don't think the studio show is the best format for Jason, unless
completely agree with you.
Yeah, unless the NFL changes kind of the studio show format.
Completely agree.
Maybe he can become like a Charles Barkley type, but the reality is when you watch these studio shows in the NFL, it's like 6 people. Everyone gets in these like 30-second sound bites, and it's not necessarily like where I would want Jason is in one of 2 roles, either in the booth, okay, which I think he would be, good at, especially over time. And especially with like the right play-by-play guy. And I was watching him kind of learn how to get his comments in between plays. He has a really good eye when he's watching the game. I think he can put it in relatable terms. I use this example in that story. Like he was doing a mock broadcast of a Vikings-Colts game, and he was actually analyzing the technique that the Colts player used to strip the ball. And he was saying, like, this is the way Nick Sirianni teaches it. But it was really informative for the viewer. And he has that personality. Where I frankly think he'd be best is, and I'm not saying create a show for Kelce, but almost like, like the Manning cast, or, you see in college football, like the coaches watching the game. I think if you had Jason sitting around like in a living room type setting or in a bar room type setting, just talking about what's going on, not necessarily within the structure of a play-by-play, but telling stories, making jokes, I think that'd be pretty good.
Agree with you on all those points. I think the point about the Fox and CBS studio shows, they are, you won't say it, I'm going to say it, they are awful. That's the worst product going. It's like you said, there's a million people. There are these quick sound bites that are just complete surface level analysis. The fake laughing has been out of control for 2 decades. So get rid of those. I would want him on, like you said, maybe in his own role, or if you're going to do something more traditional, and this could be at ESPN, it could be at Amazon Prime, it could be at NBC. I would like him in a stadium interacting with people. And I think, it depends whether I think he could do the, just straight announcing, the play-by-play or the color commentator. I think he could take on that role. He's obviously very smart. I think some of the best color commentators, frankly, have an understanding of what offensive line play is like, and the ability to watch that in real time is important. But if he wants like just interacting with people, that's his gift to me. And I know it's not exactly going to be chugging a million beers at the Bills tailgate, but maybe it's with people who are chugging a million beers at the Eagles, or at the Bills tailgate. Can you imagine him at like an Eagles tailgate, or kind of showing, like you said, whether it's the Manning cast or just like a different element of, an NFL game day, that type of thing. And then maybe he just turns into an analyst after it's over. But I certainly would not want him in a studio. I think that is my main point. I think he could do pretty much anything else, but man, just like, don't be sitting next to Terry Bradshaw or, Boomer Esiason in a studio. I think he has more to offer than that.
I hear you there. I've heard that pitch, especially during the playoffs this year when he was going around. He was at the Bills game, right? And I they should make a reality show of just Jason Kelce going to these tailgates on Sunday, and clearly that'd be fun to watch. The one thing is and look, far be it for me to give Jason any advice. Like he's handled this better. I could take some advice from him, right? I don't for Jason's purposes and for the viewers' purposes, I hope Jason becomes or does not become a caricature in that sense. Like, he's a really smart guy who he has like he's obviously like fun to be around. And you don't like, you should lean into how much fun he is, but also you don't want him just to be like the the guy who's jumping off tables or jumping on the burning tables all the time. Like, I want to hear him. I want to hear him talk and tell stories and like be insightful, because I think he has a lot to offer in that regard, and I wouldn't want to limit him in terms of like being a caricature of himself.
I get that. Maybe there's a way to do both. Maybe there's a way to have him in that kind of natural element, but talking about football and doing it in a traditional way. Anyway, I'm sure he'll be really successful regardless of whatever path he chooses. And I understand why he's kind of the most coveted free agent. Like, he's going to be great at it, I imagine.
Now we have 2 more days here where we can kind of get into some of kind of the leftover items from the owners' meetings. But before we wrap this up, I know you addressed it in your newsletter today. Was there anything as you watched Nick Sirianni, as you watched Jeffrey Lurie yesterday, that particularly struck you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're more of an expert on these State of the Union addresses. I don't have the recall on Jeffrey Lurie every year. I think first off, Jeffrey Lurie, for someone who rarely speaks, like you guys said, he is, I think, really good. Like, he answers your question right away. His demeanor is good. You can't really take anything negative away from his body language, but he also does so diplomatically. Like, he's kind of like a smooth operator up there. I was impressed with that. And to that point, like, there are some things I wish. I'm not saying he was lying to the media, because I don't think that. But there are things that I would want more detail on, and we just don't have that. Nobody is privy to that information yet. Maybe there is going to be some level of reporting on it. And Zach, like, I think my big takeaway, I read your story. It's the same one you had. Like, he's making it seem like Sirianni drove the bus on a lot of these changes, and he was behind the offensive retooling. And I think, am I wrong? But you were there at the combine for this. Hearing Sirianni's press conference at that point, it seemed like, man, this doesn't completely add up with what Sirianni said at the combine a few weeks ago. Like this quote Lurie said yesterday stood out to me. The things with Nick that were really impressive were wanting to truly improve the ingredients of the offense, truly improve who was going to lead the offense and the direction it would go. He wanted to be much more innovative and much more dynamic. I don't know. It seemed like Nick Sirianni was a little more defiant about that. And look, maybe you take a grain of salt from these press conferences, but it did seem like a slightly different message than we got from Sirianni at the combine a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I think it's more like Nick doesn't want to kind of throw away his idea of offensive football and like his ideas. And I mean, I think if he was on the show right now, I would love to have him on. He's got an open invitation. He would probably tell you that they were a top 10 offense, right? And they had the best, third down percentage in Eagles history, right? And like things like this, and that they can get more creative and they can get more innovative. But I mean, it's not as if you're watching the Patriots offense, right? Now, clearly, when he's meeting with Jeffrey Lurie a week after the season, or a few days after the season, and they just lost 6 or 7 games, including the playoffs, you can't say, all right, we're just going to run it back with the same ideas, right? You need to adjust and adapt. Now, how that looks in practice is going to be interesting. Whether it is accurate, as Jeffrey said, that Nick came in with Kellen Moore, like Bo and I talked about this yesterday. Kellen Moore is someone who Jeffrey Lurie already thought highly of. Now Nick has a background with some people who like are from that Boise State tree with Kellen Moore, knows them. I think it's something that he respected, but I do wonder if if Nick kind of presented what he thought would help his case as opposed to like truly thinking that this needs to have a radical makeover. Nonetheless, it is going to look different, right? You don't bring Kellen Moore in to run Nick Sirianni's offense.
Yeah. So, like, look, I think the actions speak louder than words here, right? Whoever was behind, I think it's important whoever was behind this and kind of, the buy-in, the level of buy-in from Nick Sirianni for these changes, how he's going to interact with Kellen Moore moving forward. But the fact of the matter is that, like the changes were made, right? They identified a problem and they are going to go about this pretty differently this season. So we will see how that goes. And then one more thing, I just thought the answer about Sirianni's body language on the sideline was pretty interesting, where he talked about, like, I think it was Bo who said this on yesterday's pod, where it reminded of the Howie answer about James Bradbury, where he was like, look, we acknowledged there was a little bit of a problem there. And Lurie, I think, he didn't acknowledge it was a problem, but I think he acknowledged that it was a talking point, at least, there is, in his words, a sweet spot that Nick needs to get to. You love his passion, but also, like, maybe don't go crazy, because the refs are, they're pretty important people, and there is a level of discipline you need in those situations. I don't know. I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. I did think it was accurate for Jeffrey to kind of paint it as he did, that you want Nick to be authentic. You don't want him to hold back, but that it could be that it was a negative at times. And to quote Jeffrey, I think he recognizes that it could be a little bit counterproductive if he overdoes his own passion, but you don't want to stop where that passion is coming from. So that's it is kind of finding that sweet spot. I don't think that Jeffrey Lurie was probably thrilled seeing, Nick Sirianni after beating the Chiefs, like Andy Reid, someone who Jeffrey has a world of respect for, like Nick kind of acting the way he did there. So I imagine that there is that sweet spot that Nick needs to find, and especially when it comes to officiating, as Jeffrey would tell you. But yeah, he was kind of honest about Sirianni's personality and Jalen Hurts' personality as well.
Yeah. So look, I thought it was good. I enjoy listening to him talk. I wish he would talk more, honestly. I know you do too.
I always enjoy talking to Jeffrey. Anytime someone can talk more, I am all in it. But we are not going to talk anymore today, because we have a good show coming, or a fun show coming tomorrow. It's opening day, as we say, one of the best holidays of the year. There's excitement in Philly, and so we're going to have an opening day themed show, and we can even mix in some of the leftovers from the owners' meeting into that. But until then, make sure you're subscribing to Rich Hofmann's newsletter. It's the best newsletter you're getting any day on Philly sports. It'll make you laugh. It'll make you think, and it'll bring you up to speed about what's going on. Thanks, Joey. Just put that up on the subscribe button. And we have 2 good shows coming up. We'll be back at noon tomorrow. Until then, that's Rich Hofmann. I'm Zach Berman. Thank you to Julia for producing this. Bo will want us to say, as always, we love you. I will say, we'll do better tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.